English. Underground shall be heard the feigned voice of a holy dame, and humane flame to see a divine one, shall cause the ground to be dyed with the sisters' blood, and the holy temples to be destroyed by the wicked. Not. Every one may understand this as well as I. English. The celestial bodies that are always visible to the eye, shall be darkened for these reasons, the body with the forehead sense and head invincible. Diminishing the sacred prayers. Not. This is of the same nature as the foregoing. English. The great swarm of bees shall rise, and it shall not be known whence they come, towards the ambush, so the jay shall be under a vine, a city shall be betrayed by 5 tongues not naked. Not. The author having made this stanza in the Provençal language, that was his mother tongue, which hath very little relation to the rest of the French tongue, hath put me to some trouble to understand it. At last I found the meaning to be this, that when a great swarm of beasts shall light on some place, and it shall not be known whence they came, then shall be seen a jay under a vine, and a city shall be betrayed by 5 several nations. English. Salon, Mansol, Tarascon, Desex, the Archie, where to this day standeth the Pyrames, shall come to deliver the Prince of Denmark, a shameful ransom shall be paid in the temple of Artemis. Not. Salon, Mansol, Tarascon, Desex, are towns in Provence and Languedoc. By the arch, here is meant the triumphal arch of Caius Marius, which he erected after the defeat of the Cimbers and Teutons, and remaineth to this day in that province, within 2 or 3 leagues off the town of Orange. Artemis is an epithet of Diana, so called pi omicron tau omicron epsilon rho tau epsilon nu nu epsilon iota nu, a secando arum. English. When Venus shall be covered by the sun, under the splendor of it shall be an occult form, Mercury in the fire shall discover them, and by a warlike rumor shall be provoked. Not. If this book cometh ever into the hands of Hermes' disciples, I shall desire they would consider diligently this stanza, and the 3 following, for they are all concerning the elixir of the philosophers, or the making of the philosopher's stone. To begin with this, when Venus shall be covered by the sun. This is the astral point, so much sought after by the philosophers, for the beginning of their work, without the knowledge of which they cannot begin their work, or come to any good. Under the splendor of it shall be an occult form, that is, under that conjunction lieth a great mystery. Mercury in the fire shall discover them, viz. Mercury of the philosophers, made by coelestial fire. And by a warlike rumor shall be provoked, that is, the planet of Mercury shall be provoked to mix his variable and changeable disposition with theirs, by his aspects, oppositions, conjunctions, and c. It is not possible to speak more plainly. English. The sun shall be hid and eclipsed by Mercury, and shall not be set but for the second heaven, Hermes shall be made a prey to Vulcan, and after that the sun shall be seen pure, shining in yellow. Not. Here I must lead the reader with Ariadne's thread, that he may extricate himself out of this labyrinth. The sun shall be hid and eclipsed by Mercury, that is, gold shall be eclipsed and dissolved by the philosopher's Mercury, which is the key and foundation of all the work. And shall not be set but for the second heaven, that is, shall not be used till you come to the second part of the work, which is that of the furnace. Hermes shall be made a prey to Vulcan, that is, the matter and composition of the elixir shall be put upon the fire in a furnace. And after that the sun shall be seen pure, shining, yellow, that is, in conclusion after projection made, thou shalt see pure, shining, and yellow gold. English. The moon will not have the sun above 11 times, then both shall be increased and lessened in degree, and put so low, that a little gold shall be sewed up, so that after hunger and plague, the secret shall be discovered. Not. The moon will not have the sun above 11 times, that is, the moon of the philosophers will not imbibe their sun above 11 times. Then both shall be increased and lessened in degree, that is, both shall be increased in quality, and lessened in quantity. And put so low that a little gold shall be sewed up, that is, the powder of projection, or philosopher's stone shall be so small in bulk, that one may sew it about him, and hide it in his cloths. After famine and plague the secret shall be discovered, that is, somebody shall die, with famine or plague, about which the secret shall be found and discovered. English. The moon at full by night upon the high mount, the new soph with one only brain hath seen it, invited by his disciples to become immortal, his eyes to the south, conclusion, his hands and body to the fire. Anat. Soph in Greek signifieth a wise man or philosopher, who shall find the philosopher's stone, when the moon shall come to the full in the night upon a high mount. His disciples shall persuade him to make himself immortal, they being persuaded that the elixir cureth all diseases. The last verse saith, his eyes to the south, his hands and body to the fire, that is, this chymist or adeptus shall retire into some southern country to work. I cannot omit here that a conceited chymist in Paris, whose name was Haumont, in English, Highmount, could not be dissuaded, but our author spake of him in this stanza, and that he could not die till he had got the philosopher's stone, but to other matters. English. In places and times, flesh shall give place to fish, the common law shall be made against it, the old man shall stand fast, then being taken away the panta, choina, philin, shall be set aside. Anat. Panta, choina, philin, are three Greek words, piophanu tau chiomicronaiodanu alpha phiota landanu, which signify in Latine, omnia inter amicos communia, and in English, all things are common among friends. The rest is easy. English. Jupiter being more joined to Venus than to the moon, appearing in a full whiteness, Venus being hid under the whiteness of Neptune, stricken by Mars through the engraved branch. Anat. These terms being astronomical and astrological, it is hard to guess at the author's mind. English. The Great One brought prisoner from a far country, and chained with gold, shall be presented to the King Chiron, being then at Ausogne. Milan shall loose the war, and all its host shall be put to fire and sword. Anat. The meaning of this is, that when a great one from a far country shall be brought prisoner chained with gold, and presented to a king called Henry, for Chiron by transposition of letters is Henry, who then shall beat Bordeaux, Milan shall loose a great army. English. The fire being put out, the virgins shall betray, the greatest part of the new troop, gunpowder, lance, shall keep only the kings, in Etruria and Corsica by night throats shall be cut. Anat. Etruria is the country Tuscany now under the Duke of Florence, and Corsica is an island in the Mediterranean Sea belonging to the Genoese. The rest is plain. English. The new place shall be set up again in France, after the victory obtained in Piedmont, mountains of Spain, the great ones tied, carried away, Romania and Spain shall quake for fear. Anat. This is a prognostication of the rejoicing that should be in France, after the winning of that famous battle Sarrazels in Piedmont, against the armies of the Emperor and the King of Spain. English. The French by leaping shall go over the mountains, and shall seize upon the great mount of the Savoyard, he shall cause his army to go to the furthermost, Genoa, and Monaco shall set out their red fleet. Anat. This prophecy is concerning Henry IV, King of France, who went over the Alpes and conquered the Duke of Savoy's country, because he would not restore the markdom of Salves. Genoa and Monaco are cities near Savoy. English. While the Duke shall bussy the King and the Queen, a great man of Constantinople shall be prisoner in Samothracia, before the assault one shall eat up the other, Rebar's shot shall trace one by the blood. Anat. The three first verses are plain, as for the fourth, either it is falsely printed, or I must confess I understand it not. English. The Rhodians shall ask for succors, being forsaken by the neglect of her heirs, the Arabian Empire shall slack his course, by the means of Spain the case shall be mended. Anat. By the Rhodians are understood the knights of Malva, because they dwelt first at Rhodes. By the second verse it is said, it was the neglect of her heirs, that is of the heirs of Rhodes, the knights of Malva, who being careless of themselves, were besieged by Solomon, which constrained them to ask succors of all the Christian princes, which came very slowly. At last Dom Garcia, viceroy of Sicily, relieved them, and drove away the Turks that had suffered great loss. Therefore the author saith in the third verse, the Arabian Empire shall slack his course. English. The strong places of the besieged shall be straitened, by gunpowder they shall be plunged into a pit, the traitors shall be shut up alive, never did happen so pitiful schism to the sacrists. Anat. By the sacrists he understandeth the clergy of the Roman religion. English. Gynical sex being captive by hostage, shall come by night to deceive her keepers, the chief of the camp being deceived by her language, shall leave her folks, a thing pitiful to behold. Anat. Gynical sex is a woman from the Greek word gamma-upsilon, which signifieth a woman. The meaning then of this stanza is, that a woman being given in hostage, and made prisoner, shall deceive her keepers, and among the rest, the chief captain who shall forsake his troops and run away with her. English. Genevan Langres by those of Chartres and Dole, and by one of Grenoble captive at Montlamar, Cicet, Lausanne by a fraudulent deceit, shall betray them for 30 pounds weight of gold. Anat. All those towns are in France, the sense is plain. English. There shall be heard in the air noise of weapons, and in that same year the divines shall be enemies, they shall unjustly put down the holy laws, and by the thunder and the war true believers shall die. Anat. There is no obscurity in this. English. Two great ones of Mende, of Rodez and Miliaud, Cor, Limoges, Castres an evil week, by night the entry shall be from Bordeaux 1 Cailha, through Perigord at the ringing of the bell. Anat. This stanza is half French and half Provençal language. All the cities named here, Mende, Rodez, Miliaud, Cor, Limoges, Castres, Bordeaux, Perigord, are cities of France, bordering upon Provence, which is the country wherein our author was born. The meaning of it is, that all those cities shall rise against the collectors of the king's taxes, and shall set upon them by the sound of the bell, which is already come to pass, and may come to pass yet. English. By a battle the king shall forsake his kingdom, the greatest commander shall fail in time of need, they shall be killed and routed, few shall escape, they shall be cut off, one only shall be left for a witness. Anat. This is a prognostication of a great battle, by the loss of which a king shall forsake his kingdom, his chief commander having deserted him in time of need. The slaughter shall be so great, that none shall be left, but one for a witness. English. The fact shall be defended excellently well. Tours, beware of thy approaching ruin. London and Nantes by Rheims shall stand upon their defense. Do not go further in foggy weather. Anat. Tours is the chief city of a province in France, called Touraine, which is commended here for having resisted excellently well, but is forewarned to look to herself after that, and to beware of her approaching ruin. English. The wild black one, after he shall have tried his bloody hand by fire, sword, bended bows, all the people shall be so fright to see the greatest hang by the neck and feet. Anat. It is a description of a tyrant, who after he shall have tried his bloody hand by fire, sword, and bent bows, shall cause his chief men to be hanged by the neck and feet. Since the author did write there had been such a tyrant in the world, namely, John Basilides, Great Duke of Russia, in the year 1572. Read Paul Osborne in his life. English. The plain about Bordeaux fruitful and spacious, shall produce so many hornets and so many grasshoppers, that the light of the sun shall be darkened, they shall crop all, a great plague shall come from them. Anat. I cannot find in history that this hath yet happened, since the writing of these prophecies, therefore I reckon it de futuro. English. Before the people blood shall be spilt, who shall not come far from the high heaven, but it shall not be heard of for a great while, the spirit of one shall come to witness it. Anat. This prophecy is concerning some just person, that shall be murdered openly, his blood shall cry to heaven, but shall not be heard for a good while, till at last it shall be discovered by some body. English. Libra shall see Spain to reign, and have the monarchy of heaven and earth, no body shall see the forces of Asia to perish, till 7 have kept the hierarchy successively. Anat. Libra is one of the 12 signs of the zodiac, which is favorable to Spain, so that the meaning of this is, that Libra shall see Spain to reign. And besides that, to have the monarchy of heaven and earth, that is, to have the command of the Pope, and of the best part of Europe. So that no Asian or Turkish forces shall receive damage by the Christians, till 7 popes of the Spanish faction have reigned successively, and one after another. English. A duke being earnest in the pursuit of his enemy shall come in, hindering the phalange, hastened on foot shall follow them so close, that the day of the battle shall be near Ganges. A knot. A phalange, in Latine phalanx, is a squadron of soldiers, which word was anciently proper only to the Macedonians. Ganges is a river in India. English. In a besieged city, men and women being upon the walls, the enemies without, the governor ready to surrender, the wind shall be strong against the soldiers, they shall be driven away by lime, dust, and ashes. A knot. This is a peculiar and remarkable accident, wherein the besiegers of a city shall be driven away from their enterprise, by lime, dust, and ashes, scattered and dispersed against them by a mighty wind. English. The runaways and banished men being recalled, fathers and sons garnishing the high wells, the cruel father and his retinue shall be suffocated, his son being worse, shall be drowned in the well. A knot. The words are plain, out of which every one may make his own sense. English. Of the name that a French king never was, there was never a lightning so much feared, Italy shall tremble, Spain and the English, he shall be much taken with women strangers. A knot. This foretelleth that when a French king shall have a name that never any of his predecessors had, he shall be so much feared as that Italy, Spain, and England shall tremble, and that besides he shall be much given to women. English. When the crow upon a tower made of brick, for 7 hours shall do nothing but cry, death shall be foretold, and the statue dyed with blood, tyrant shall be murdered, and the people pray to the gods. A knot. This extraordinary prodigy of a crow crying for 7 hours together upon a brick tower, foretelleth that some notorious tyrant shall be put to death, and his statue sprinkled with blood, and withal, that the people either for joy or fear shall be much given to prayer. English. After the victory got over a raging tongue, the mind that was tempted, shall be in tranquility and rest, the bloody conqueror by battle shall make a speech, and roast the tongue, the flesh, and the bones. A knot. It is a conqueror who having been much railed at by his enemies, shall in conclusion, after he hath overcome them, take a severe vengeance of them. English. Ignorant envy being supported by the great king, shall talk of prohibiting the riddings, his wife no wife, being tempted by another, shall more than they two prevail by crying. A knot. Some ignorant envious person being in favor with the king, shall go about to suppress learning, but the king's wife no wife, that is his concubine, shall persuade him to the contrary, and shall prevail. English. Burning sun shall be poured into the throat, this human blood shall wet the Hetaean ground, the chief pail of water shall lead his son to spin, a captive lady shall be carried into the Turkish country. A knot. By burning sun must be understood melted gold, which shall be poured into one's throat, in the Hetaean ground, that is in Tuscany. By the chief pail of water is to be understood, some water-bearer, who shall make his son an eunuch to make benefit on't. The fourth verse is plain. English. Two besieged, being in a burning heat, shall die for thirst, want of 2 bowls full, the fort being filed, an old doting man, shall show to the Genoese the way to Nizza. A knot. The 2 first verses are plain. The 2 last verses signify that an old doting man shall shew to the Genoese the way how to take Nizza, a town hard by them, by filing some iron grates, by which they shall get into the town. English. The 7 children being left in hostage, the 3rd shall come to kill his child, 2 by their sons shall be run through, Genoa and Florence shall second them. A knot. The words being so plain, everybody may give as good an interpretation as I English. The old man shall be baffled and deprived of his place, by the stranger that shall suborn him, but of his son shall be eaten before his face, the brother at Chartres. ORL. Shall betray Rouen. A knot. This stanza is divided into 2 parts. The first part runneth from the first verse to the middle of the 4th. The meaning is, that an old man shall be baffled and deprived of his place by a stranger that shall suborn him, but that stranger's son's brother shall be eaten up before his face in the town of Chartres. What he meaneth by eaten up, is hard to guess, whether it be by poverty, suits at law, envy, lice, and sea. the hemisthicion of the last verse, ORL. Shall betray Rouen, signifieth that Orleans shall betray Rouen. English. A colonel deviseth a plot by his ambition, he shall seize upon the best part of the army, against his prince he shall have a feigned invention, and shall be discovered under the harbour of the Vine. Anat. I never saw the last tyrant Cromwell better painted to the life, than in the 3 first verses. As for the 4th, it is certain that his intention among his camerata was first discovered by him unto them at the Star Tavern in Coleman Street, which is the place that the author calleth the harbour of the Vine. English. The Celtic army shall go against the Highlanders, who shall stand upon their guard, and be taken with birdlime twigs, the peasant being angry, shall roll down the stones, they shall be all put to the edge of the sword. Anat. This is a description of the attempt made by the French upon Savoy, which Count Rayleigh in the mountains of the Alpes, therefore called here Highlanders, where the peasants being incensed for the loss of their goods and the ruin of their Count Ray, rolled stones from the top of the mountains against the French army, which could not hinder them from being destroyed. This came to pass under Henry IV, King of France, in the year 1662. English. The guilty, in a citizen's habit, shall come to tempt the king concerning his offence, 15 soldiers the most part Count Ray men, the last shall be his life, and the best part of his estate. Anat. This signifieth that a great man having committed an offence against the king, shall come to him in a mean habit, to sue for his pardon, and shall be carried away by 15 soldiers, the most part Count Ray fellows, and in conclusion he shall have his life saved, and the best part of his estate. English. After that the deserter of the great fort shall have forsaken his place, his adversary shall do so great feats, that the emperor shall soon be condemned to death. Anat. This is plain. English. Under the faint colour of 7 shaven heads, shall divers spies be framed, wells and fountains shall be sprinkled with poison, in the fort of Genoa shall be humane devourers. Anat. The 3 first verses belong to the same sense, viz. that 7 men shall be spies, under pretence to be priests or monks, which is the meaning of the shaven heads, and shall poison the wells and springs. The last verse signifieth that in the fort of Genoa there shall be devourers of men, that is, usurers and extortioners, which is no new thing in that nation. English. In the year that Saturn and Mars shall be fiery, the air shall be very dry, in many countries, by secret fires, many places shall be burnt with heat, there shall be scarcity of rain, hot winds, wars, inroads. Anat. This is the prognostication of a mighty dry season, and other accidents that shall happen when Saturn and Mars shall be in a fiery disposition, which whether it be by opposition, conjunction, aspect, and see. Let the astrologers judge. English. In a year that is to come shortly, and not far from Venus, the 2 greatest ones of Asia and Africa shall be said to come from the Rhine and Ister, crying, and tears shall be at Malta and in the Ligurian shore. Anat. The Rhine is a river in Germany, Ister is another in the Count Ray of Istria, belonging to the Venetians. By the first verse, I conclude that this prophecy came to pass a little while after the author wrote this book, when the Grand Seigneur Solomon besieged Malta, and put in fear all the Ligurian coast, which is that of Genoa. English. The banished shall keep the great city, the citizens being dead, murdered and expelled, those of Aquileia shall promise to Parma, to shew the entrance by unknown paths. Anat. Aquileia and Parma are 2 cities in Italy. The rest is easy. English. Near the great Pyrenean mountains, one shall raise a great army against the eagle, veins shall be opened, forces driven out, so that the chief shall be driven as far as the Pau. Anat. By the eagle here is understood the empire, because his ensign is an eagle. English. Instead of the bride, the maid shall be killed, the murder shall be a great fault, none shall be surviving, in the well they shall be drowned with their clothes, the bride shall be extinguished by an high aconite. Anat. This is a prophecy of a tragical nuptial, where all the maids shall be drowned with their clothes in a well, insomuch that none shall survive, and the bride shall be poisoned, and die by aconite, which is one of the most poisonous herbs, that is, witness Juvenal, Lurida terribiles mis sent asinida noversi. English. The Artemiques through Aegon and Lector shall keep their parliament at St. Felix, these of Bozes shall come in an unhappy hour, to seize upon Condon and Marsan speedily. Not. By the Artemiques he meaneth the Protestants, because they take the communion with leavened bread, which in Greek is called artos. Aegon, Lector, St. Felix, Bozes, Condon and Marsan are cities of Gascony. The rest is plain. English. The great nephew by force shall provoke, the sin committed by the pusillanimous heart, Ferrara and Ast shall make trial of the Duke, when the pantomime shall be in the evening. Not. To understand the whole sense of this, we must first know what is meant by the particular terms. The great nephew is the brother or sister son of some great person, who by force shall discover the treason or cowardice committed by some pusillanimous or fearful man. Ferrara and Ast are two towns in Italy, shall make trial of a duke, by being either taken or assaulted. When the pantomime shall be in the evening, that is, when the comedy shall be acted, for pantomime in Greek signifieth a comedian. English. From Lake Leman, and from the Brannanus, they shall be gathered against those of Aquitania, great many Germans, and many more Switzers, shall be routed together with those of Maine. Not. Lake Leman is the Lake of Geneva. The Brannanuses are those of Sens, so called, because they took Rome under the conduct of their captain Brennus, and afterwards built Brennona, a town belonging since to the Venetians, who calls it Verona. Aquitania is that province of France, called now Gascony. Maine is a province in France. The rest needeth no explication. English. One being ready to fight, shall faint, the chief of the adverse party shall obtain the victory, the rearguard shall withstand it out, those that fall away shall die in the white territory. Not. There is nothing difficult here, but what he meaneth by the white territory, whether it be positive or allegorical, I leave the judgment of it to the reader. English. The Nictobriges by those of Perigord shall be vexed as far as the Rosne, the associate of the Gascons in Bigorre, shall betray the church while the priest is in his pulpit. Not. Nictobriges in Greek signifieth a people living in a dark and moist country. Perigord and Bigorre are two towns in France. The rest is plain. English. Cellin being monarch, Italy shall be in peace, kingdoms shall be united, a Christian king of the world, dying, shall desire to be buried in the country of Blois, after he shall have driven the pirates from the sea. Not. Cellin is the name of a Turkish emperor, the meaning therefore of this is, that under the reign of one Cellin a Turkish emperor, Italy shall be in peace, and all the Christian princes united. English. The great army belonging to the civil war, having found by night Parma possessed by strangers, shall kill 79 in the town, and put all the strangers to the sword. Not. Parma is a city in Italy. The rest is plain. English. Royal blood run away from Monhert, Marsan, Aiguillon, the land shall be full of Bourdeloire, Navarre, Bigorre, shall have points and pricks. Being deep in hunger, they shall devour the cork and acorns. Not. Monhert, Marsan, Aiguillon are towns in Gascony. Landis is a desert country, wherein nothing groweth but pine trees, Bourdelois are those of Bordeaux. Navarre is a kingdom, and Bigorre a province joining to those Landis, or pine trees, country. English. Near the great river, a great pit, earth digged out, in 15 parts the water shall be divided, the city taken, fire, blood, cries, fighting, and the greatest part concerneth the Colossus. Not. This prophecy was fulfilled, when Rome was taken and sacked by Charles Duke of Bourbon, and Philibert of Chalon Prince of Orange, generals of the Emperor Charles V, with such cruelties, as never was committed by the bloody Goths and Vandals, and to shew that the author intended Rome, is apparent by two instances. The first is by the great river, which is the Tiber, which though not very great in its channel and depth, yet is very great, yea, the greatest in Europe by its fame. The other is the word Colossi, which is that famous arch of Trajan in Rome, remaining yet to this day. English. A bridge of boats shall suddenly be made, to pass over the army of the great Belgic prince, in deep places, and not far from Bruxelles, being gone over, there shall be 7 cut with a pike. Not. This is concerning the siege of Antwerp by the Prince of Parma, governor of the Low Countries for the King of Spain, who having besieged, caused a bridge of boats to be made upon the river Schelde, to hinder the succors of the Hollanders, who by that means were constrained to surrender it. English. A great troop gathered, shall come from Sclavonia, the old Olestant shall ruin a city, he shall see his Romania very desolate, and after that, shall not be able to quench that great flame. Not. That great troop from Sclavonia shall be the Venetians, because they possess most part of that country. The old Olestant is their duke, because he is not chosen unless he be very old. By Romania is understood what the Venetians possess in that country. English. In a fight by night, the valiant captain, being vanquished, shall run away, overcome by few, his people being moved, shall make no small mutiny, his own son shall besiege him. Not. This needeth no interpretation. English. A great man of Auxerre shall die very miserably, being expelled by those that have been under him, bound with chains, and after that with a strong cable, in the year that Mars, Venus, and Sol shall be in a conjunction in the summer. Not. Auxerre is a city of France, distant from Paris 40 leagues to the southward. English. The white coal shall be expelled by the black one, he shall be made prisoner, carried in a dung cart, his feet twisted upon a black camel, then the youngest shall suffer the hobby to have more thread. Not. The first verse is altogether allegorical and metaphorical, therefore I leave it to the judgment of every reader. I shall only deliver my opinion upon the whole. I take it to be some white prince, that shall be overcome by a black one, put in a dung cart, after that, tied upon a black camel, and then the younger son of that black prince shall give the prisoner a little more liberty. English. In the year that Saturn in Aquarius shall be in conjunction with Sol, the king being strong and powerful, shall be received and anointed at Rhines and Aix, after conquest he shall murder innocent persons. Not. This prophecy is remarkable for the things that it foretelleth, viz. that in the year that Saturn shall be in conjunction with Sol in the sign of Aquarius, a king of France shall be anointed both at Reims and Aix, for Reims is a city in France, where the kings used to be anointed and crowned, and Aix is another in Germany, where the emperors used to be so. But the last verse is ominous, where he saith, that after his conquests he shall murder innocent persons. English. A son of a king having learned divers languages, shall fall out with his elder brother for the kingdom, his father-in-law being more concerned with his elder son, shall cause the principal adherent to perish. Not. One king shall have 2 sons, the eldest shall succeed him in the kingdom, the youngest having been well brought up and educated, shall raise troubles against the king his brother, but he shall be destroyed by the means of his own father-in-law. English. The great Antony by name, but in effect sordid, of Tiresias shall at last be eaten up, one that shall be covetous of lead, going upon Port d'Eslu shall fall into the water. Not. Tiresias in Greek is the disease called by the Latines morbus pedicularis, when one is devoured by lice, as were Herod's, Sylla, Phariscides, and Philip II. King of Spain, and c. As for Port d'Eslu, the question is, whether it be the proper name of a place, or the name of a man, that shall throw another in the water. English. 30 of London shall secretly conspire against their king, upon the bridge the plot shall be made, these satellites shall taste of death, a king shall be elected, fair, and born in Friesland. Not. Here may be alleged that passage of Scripture, there is nothing so secret but shall be revealed, for here is plainly told the number of those wicked persons, who conspired against their lawful sovereign King Charles I of blessed memory, as also the place where the plot was first laid, for it is well known that they used to assemble at the Bear at the bridge foot. English. The 2 armies shall not be able to join by the walls, at that instant Milan and the Sin shall tremble, hunger, thirst, and fear shall so seize upon them, they shall not have a bit of meat, bread, nor victuals. Not. Milan is a city in Italy, and the Sin is the river that passeth by it. English. A French duke compelled to fight a duel, the ship of Mull shall not come near Monaco, wrongfully accused shall have a perpetual prison, his son shall endeavor to reign before his death. Not. To understand this stanza, we must suppose for histories, part in realiteth the first, which is, that the French and Spanish armies having their winter quarters in the Dukedom of Milan, anno 1555. The Marquis of Pescara sent word to the Duke of Nemours, by a French gentleman, that he and 3 more desired to break a lance with him upon the borders of Ast. The Duke accepted the challenge, without giving notice to the Marquis of Brissac, then general of the French army, who was very angry at it. Nevertheless he advised the Duke to go, but not with a gilt and light armor, but with a wrong one, such as became a cavaliero, which he did not do, nor the other 3 that went with him, whence it came, that the Lord Class a Frenchman, running against Mailspine, was wounded to death in the shoulder. Nevertheless one of the seconds to the Duke of Nemours, the Lord Monchauve killed upon the place Carassa, nephew to Pope Marcel II. And the Lord Manoa, one of the Duke of Nemours' party, falling from his horse a little wounded, broke his neck. As for the Duke of Nemours, he ran twice against the said Marquis, without hitting one another, but at the 3rd time they both brake their lances, without doing any harm. Thus, the French Duke was compelled to fight a duel. We have the second history from Turpin, and many others, which is, that the Marquis of Masseran, having put himself into the King of France's service, in hopes to have the government of Belize, and proving a traitor, the Marshal of Brissac, who had discovered his perfidiousness, resolved to take him in his house of Galenny, which he had fortified to secure his retreat after his treason. The Lord de Termes was commanded to do it, which he did so dexterously, that he took him into his house after dinner, and then compelled him presently to surrender the castle of Gemaglia. The Marquis obeying, sent thither presently his son Claudius, to put it into the hands of the Lords de la Mante and of Villers. These 2 viewing the castle, to observe the places that might be fortified, and going from room to room, heard a lamentable voice, crying, "Have mercy upon me." They caused presently the prison doors to be opened, and found a poor gentleman of Versailles, whom the Marquis had detained there 18 years, for endeavouring to serve an execution against him, in the Duke of Savoy's behalf. And it is remarkable that his imprisonment was all this while concealed, so that no body ever heard of it, insomuch that his friends suspecting he had been killed by one of his enemies, they prosecuted him so hard, that after much torturing, he confessed what he had not done, and was consequently put to death in the presence of the said Marquis of Masseran, who knew the Count Ray. Thus we see one wrongfully accused that was executed, and this gentleman's imprisonment, which was to be perpetual. After this, they carried the poor gentleman almost all naked, and being nothing but skin and bones, to the Lord of Termes, who caused him to be clothed, and gave him money to go back to his friends. The third history is, that the Duke of Nemours' son was one of the chief ringleaders of the League against Henry IV. And did what he could before he died to get the kingdom of France, endeavouring first to make himself sovereign prince of Lyon, Forest, and Beaucalois. The fourth history is, that at the latter end of the year 1555, the Lord La Mole, carrying to Rome the cardinals of Tournon and Lorraine, went directly to the island of Corsica, whence he drew some forces, which he joined to his, and to those of Montluc, and would not land at Monaco for some reasons, but went directly to Civita Vecchia. By this we understand that verse of the stanza, "The ship of the Mole shall not come near Monaco." English. The head cut off, the valiant captain shall be thrown down before his adversary, his body hanged at the sails yard, confused, they shall fly with oars against the wind. Not. These words are plain enough, though no body can tell whether the thing is past already, or shall come to pass hereafter.